You will vanish, magically vanish in return. Well, good morning and welcome to the Juniper Center Thrive Live, where we have conversations with guests to help clinicians and everybody else thrive and to normalize conversations about mental health. Uh, of course, one of my favorite topics. I'm your host, Dr. Margot Jacot. I'm the founder and chief care officer of the Juniper Center. We are a practice in the Chicagoland area and now throughout the United States with telehealth. So glad you can be here today. Thanks for tuning in. Please feel free to say hello in the chat box. Let us know, or the comments box. Let us know that you're here. If you have a question, a comment, a thought, I'd love to hear from you. And let me tell you about our guest today. And I'm really delighted to welcome Ania Waisaka to the show. Ania founded Rooted, it's ROOTD, in 2017. It's now the #1 anxiety and panic app, or panic attack relief app, on the App Store and in Google Play. It's really cute, folks. You have to go check it out. With over 1 million downloads across 150 countries having downloaded her app. In 2020, Ania was named among British Columbia's 30 under 30. Congratulations, that's quite a distinction. All of her great work, including offering free subscriptions during the COVID-19 pandemic, which was really generous. Welcome, Ania, and welcome all to the Juniper Center Thrive Live. Well, good morning, Ania. How are you?
Good morning.
Oh, Sandy is here. Good morning, Sandy. So, Ania, thank you so much for joining us. You are in British Columbia, where it is dark 30 still.
Yes.
So much appreciated that you got up and did this with us. So I'm going to introduce Ron in a moment because, there's you. You are one face of the app, and then there's another face who is Ron. But let's start a little bit with, if you don't mind, just telling us a little bit about your personal story, right? Because we all have an origin story. Ron has an origin story. You have an origin story. How did you come to develop this app?
Yeah, so I was in my last year of university when I started getting panic attacks unexpectedly. And I didn't have a family doctor. I was far away from home. I was very confused about what it was and what was happening. I'd never really understood what panic attacks were. I always thought it was just people stressed out too much. And I had little to no understanding of, how far off I was. And so my doctor was telling me I was okay, and like a walk-in clinic doctor, because I didn't have that family doctor, which I think would have also helped. And so I was left feeling really, really confused and started learning my own things using the campus's resources, the university's resources, to look up facts and information about panic attacks. That's what led me to the work of Dr. Claire Weeks, who is also an influence in the app. And I started lugging this information with me around campus, these books and these things that I didn't even want to leave the house without, because they're so comforting and it was such a tough time. And then I thought, you know what, this should be an app. So that's how Rooted started. It wasn't for a few years since then, or after that I kind of took everything I learned and combined it with my love for graphic design and writing content, that Rooted was born.
Yeah, you have a lot of interesting talents. It sounds like you love languages, you do tech, you're very creative. So this is, working with words. So there's a lot in this app that just seems to speak to your strengths. So can you talk to us a little bit about having an app for mental health and how that helps people?
Yeah, so Rooted is essentially, the tagline is panic attack and anxiety relief right in your pocket. So it's a combination of different tools, resources, and exercises that are therapist approved and are there to both help in the moment if you're having a panic attack, but also for that lifelong change if you are managing your anxiety and you just want to really work on that for the long run and kind of change how that is influencing your life. So it's got a number of different breathing exercises and visualizations, a journal tool. Yeah, that's Ron. And an actual panic button. So these all help people And they have shared, different users have shared that it's helped them get back to work, it's helped them get back to school, it's helped them feel less dependent in their relationship and help them grow their self-esteem, which is pretty important because as you're experiencing anxiety, your self-esteem can get pretty affected.
That is so true. I'm glad you brought that up, Anya, because that's absolutely, folks can feel like, what's wrong with me? I'm broken. I'm weak. Why can't I control this? And it's a nervous system, automatic, autonomic, automatic reaction. And as you said, when you were at university, it just started happening out of nowhere for no particular reason that you could identify.
Mhm.
And maybe you could dig back in and find out why, but the finding out why doesn't solve the problem. And that I think is where an app can be such a wonderful adjunct to therapy, because we're in there trying to really get at the roots. Because if you have something that's, I think of it like this, like if you've got in your refrigerator, there's that old cheese sitting at the back. If you don't deal with the old cheese sitting at the back, that smell eventually is going to permeate everything else. So if there's something in us that we're not addressing, then it's going to permeate all areas of our life. But boy, when you're in that moment, you need something that's going to give you immediate relief. So
Mhm.
you have over 1 million users in 150 countries. I mean, you have gotten the word out. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Phenomenal. And yay for you. I'm such a huge fan of anything that helps smash the stigma around mental health,
Mhm.
anything that helps people have tools that they need. I've talked to some therapists who've said, I'm a little uncomfortable with all the AI and the app stuff because it's going to, really impact our work with people. And I said, yeah, in a positive way. They said, well, we don't want to be put out of a job. And I thought, if an app, if an app can do what you're doing, maybe you ought to be doing, maybe there's something more you could be doing. These things can exist together. So clearly
Mhm.
what you're doing is speaking to people. 1 million downloads. That's phenomenal. So it sounds like this is very science based. You use cognitive behavioral techniques.
Mhm.
And, and that you said did you say it's therapist approved or
Approved.
therapist?
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, before publishing anything, because I personally don't have a formal background in psychology. I'm just very interested and will research for days at a time. But I definitely run everything by a therapist before it's published and clinically registered therapists.
That's
Yeah. And you brought up a really great point, though, about the relationship between healthcare apps and doctors. And I think it's, yeah, pretty important to note that it's meant to be a symbiotic relationship. It's not meant to replace anything. It's really meant to be there when you yourself are not able to, and you can't feel those calls in the middle of the night, which is when a panic attack will typically happen. Rooted is there for them in those moments. And then we definitely encourage people to see therapists throughout the app. And we always say, don't wait for things to get really bad. Although, if they already are downloading the app, it's already potentially bad enough that they should really see someone. But yeah, we're very much pro therapy and we promote that within the app.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And cognitive behavioral therapy, for anyone who is not familiar, is considered best practices, one of the best practices in psychology, which means it has a lot of data saying that it's very effective. So I'm with you. I think these things can work really well together. And I want to hear how therapists can utilize this
Mhm.
within their practices. It's like anything else. If we are giving somebody a worksheet or any other tool, if we're not having to take all the time in the session to teach people these skills, we can reinforce them. We can help them use them during session. Then we can really get back to the other work, which is I think what really therapy is about is gaining increased awareness and having those tools and using all of those things together. So I think there's a real nice balance for the two. So what does that partnership typically look like? How are therapists using this? Let's say I wanted to provide this. We have a large practice. We have 62 clinicians. If we wanted to provide this for our whole team to be able to share with our really now thousands of clients who work with our practice, how would we do that?
Yeah, so in 2019, we launched enterprise plans. So essentially, that is a easy way for a group of therapists or schools or any organization really that wants to provide rooted to their staff, clients, employees, etc. And that works on the premise that it will, if you reach out to us, we can, arrange a plan where it costs less than it would for those individuals in the App Store directly, because that's where most of users are using Root is directly from the app stores. And yeah, in a way that it's either by a code where you can just provide a code to your clients, or maybe they get a referral discount. So there's plenty of ways to work together. And we really just want to get the word out about Rooted and make sure that people have it when they really need it. And actually, even without these plans, counselors and therapists and psychologists have been some of our greatest referrers.
Oh,
We
good.
hear from users all the time that their counselor referred them to Rooted, that they were actually in the hospital and the doctor in the hospital referred them to Rooted. Sometimes panic attacks can result in those 911 calls. And so I think doctors are looking for resources to give out that way. So you can totally do that on your own. But if you want an extra discount or extra something for your clients, then you can definitely reach out to team@rooted.io. So team and then ROOTD.io. And yeah, we're always happy to find a way to work together.
Fabulous. Well, so folks, if you're watching and you're interested in this, if you're therapists, if you're watching now or you're watching afterwards, please feel free to reach out to them. Here's the information. We're going to do the same because I think this sounds like a really great tool. So can you just dig into the app a little bit with us and tell the viewers a bit about, so there's a panic button. It's an actual panic button.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work? What are some of the features? So we know it's cognitive behavioral therapy. What would some of the features look like? And Sandy's saying she would love the code for the premium service. So that's great.
Yeah, please feel free to email me afterwards, Sandy. So in addition to that Rooter button, which the way it works is it invites you, depending on how you're feeling, to either face the feelings head on or to hear some really comforting phrases if you don't want to deal with it then. So that's based on the idea within cognitive behavioral therapy about, accepting the fear and letting it kind of go through you rather than resisting. And that has a huge effect on how we react. If we resist, it can keep permeating. It can keep, bugging us, and we have this heightened sense of alarm. Whereas if we accept it, we can get through it a bit easier. And ultimately, that's really the way to heal them too, is to not be as afraid anymore. So the app, the lessons themselves, the content will teach all of that theory, because it's really hard to do that out of nowhere, especially if you're struggling with this. So when you're in the Rooter tool, you can actually choose whether you are feeling overwhelmed, you just want to get this over with, get this panic attack out of the way. Maybe you're on a plane, or you're about to head into a meeting at work, or you are in a subway. You're just in a place where you don't want to challenge yourself, and that is totally okay. And that is most of the way I use it too, to be honest. And then there's the other way of really challenging yourself head on, and that's when you're feeling really confident. You're feeling confident in what you've learned in the Rooted lessons or with your counselor, and you're able to really accept these feelings. And those are those empowering moments, which I will leave to, if I'm feeling I'm in a safe place, I can do this, I can really challenge myself. So both of those will ultimately help end the panic attack. And then the second one will definitely help towards that more lifelong change that many are looking for. So that's how that red button works. In addition, here you see the short-term lessons and the long-term lessons. The short-term lessons are really for if you want things that you can do in the short term. So things like diet and exercise, how we approach social media. The long-term lessons are things around how do we sleep again, and learning how to do writing exercises, and changing the way we talk about ourselves to ourselves. Because as I mentioned earlier, our self-esteem can really take a toll with this. And there's the understanding lessons, which really go over what anxiety is and what's happening, because that's actually one of the first questions people have. And then the short-term and long-term lessons. In addition to the Rooter button, we also have a breathing tool to practice guided deep breathing, because it's something that you can practice when you're feeling calm, and then you're easily able to call on it when you're not. Because sometimes when we start feeling panic and anxiety, we can really, all those tools that we talked about and maybe talked about with our therapist, they can kind of, we don't remember them in the moment because we're so stressed out. So there's that tool we recommend practicing often so you can kind of get the gist of it when you're not feeling anxiety. We've also got the journal tool, which is another thing. And, as you mentioned, what people kind of need to look at where this started, and journaling and recognizing habits around anxiety can really help with that. So the example that I give is, I might go to my counselor and say, hey, I've had so many panic attacks. It's been awful. And then you might say, okay, well, how many has it really been? And, our brain can kind of have that bias where we're like, oh, it was an awful week, but it's like, okay, it looks like once last week, like once really bad, but in the past 2 weeks, twice. It's like, okay, well, what day did that happen on? It's like, oh, well, it happened on Tuesday. What else happens on Tuesday? Well, Tuesday is the day that I call my dad. Okay, maybe let's talk about your dad. So, or your relationship with your dad. So there are these little kind of things that you can find when you are tracking your habits like that. And last but not least, we also have a visualization tool. So as opposed to meditation, you're not sitting in silence when you're hearing it. You're constantly given a visualization because it is hard for someone to sit in silence if they're experiencing intrusive thoughts and help with anxiety too.
Yeah. Well, it could be hard for people to sit in silence no matter what. So
Mhm.
having something that's more guided, I can't tell you how many times I've been talking to someone and they've said, I really just can't meditate. It just doesn't work for me,
Yeah,
meaning
totally.
it's really kind of stressful for them. So wonderful. So there's this thing that you're describing, Anya, which is when people are stressed, it's very hard to find their tools. As people are entering anxiety, stress, anxiety, panic, if we kind of think of it as a stair step up, the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking, rational part of the brain, can get kind of lost. It literally, if we were to look at it on a scan, the activity would dim. And then your emotional centers are really firing. So, one of the nice things about an app is you don't have to just remember all of your tools. You have to remember to go to your app, and that's just one
Mhm.
step. So, I think that could be really useful for folks to think about is that boy, if you can just go to the app will then guide you when you're really in that panic state. So I love that. So if you're interested in the app, you can get the Rooted app in the App Store or on Google Play. If anyone else has a question, a comment, a thought, we would love to know you're out there. Love to hear anything that you have on your mind. I really appreciate the fact that aside from the quality of the app, that there aren't that many app developers who are in tech or who are women. All app developers are in tech who are in women. Sorry, I saw something pop up on the screen. So that are women. So tell me a little bit about that for you. What has that part of your journey been like?
Yeah, I'd say it's been both a blessing and a curse for this industry. I think that, the topic with anxiety and being able to write about it in a way that really speaks to me was really important. And it's part of what has contributed to Rooted success. I mean, I didn't go into it thinking it was just for people, not just for, because people of all demographics use it. In fact, we actually have our youngest user is 7, whose parents use the app with her, and they write in to share how it's helping. And it's our oldest user is, I think, in his early 70s, and same idea. His kids and his social worker use the app with him and write in to say how it's helped him. So love hearing stories like that. But the bulk of the demographic using Rooted is females from 18 to 40, really. And I didn't write it with that in mind, but it makes sense that it naturally happened because I was using the language that worked best for me. And I think there really weren't many tools out there like that. The apps that existed were either hypnosis apps or they were very medical, like written very like kind of colder language, let's say, rather than this warm and inviting language. And part of what I was trying to do is make anxiety seem less scary. And so I do think that in some ways, maybe being in my demographic really helped me do that. And I've heard from doctors at large clinics where they said, hey, we're stealing some of the wording from your app so we can
Right?
talk about it with our patients like that, which is a compliment. Yeah, I'm very happy for that to happen.
Mhm,
So I think that was definitely the blessing.
mhm.
And then, there are those stories you hear about in tech, which are pretty true about, sometimes being the only female around a table isn't the best thing. You can get kind of washed out. I think now in my career, I'm much more comfortable speaking up for myself. But before I wasn't, because I was learning, and that's totally natural.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would say something maybe, and then somebody else would repeat it and get the acknowledgement for what I
Right.
had said. And it actually happens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it totally happens. And yeah, I think just not always being taken as seriously sometimes, just being also like a young woman in tech was like the double reason for people to maybe ignore me at first. And I think that I was often told that rooted was very hard, that what I was trying to do is very hard. So I should brace myself. And like, women don't take risk, but you've got to take risk now. And I've just been hearing stuff like that through the whole journey. So
Women
I
don't.
think that yeah, I think that now things are quite different. I've actually seen a change since when I started Rooted till now, because it's been 4 or 5 years now. And I think that the language we use around being inclusive in tech is changed. And I think we'll start to feel that really soon. But I have to say, it was definitely sometimes that were total bummers. And I feel like I had to have even more of motivation to keep going. But so yeah, that's a bit of my perspective on that. But overall, I'm hoping that it will not be a limitation to anyone. And I definitely encourage other females in tech to join and keep pursuing what it is they're passionate about, because just because you don't always see yourself there doesn't mean you shouldn't be there.
Right. Exactly. Just because you don't see yourself there doesn't mean you shouldn't be there. You need to be there, and you need to then show other people that it's a great place to be, which I think
Mhm.
you've done. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. 1 million downloads, they were wrong. Ania.
Totally.
They
Yeah.
were wrong.
And I am hearing from some of those people now being like, hey, remember I said that? Sorry about that. So
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Good. Good. Glad they
Mhm.
can eat a little
Yeah.
bit of crow. That's good. So you talked about part of what the app does, and I took a look at it. It does seem to make anxiety less scary, because anxiety is a fear response. So, and then we have anxiety about our anxiety. We have fear about our fear, right? Fear
Mhm.
about the
Yes.
anxiety. So I think the app does make it less scary, both in your language and with Ron. We've seen Ron, but can we pop Ron up quickly so we can take a quick peek and kind of get a feel? So tell us about Ron and how you came to develop him or them or whatever their pronouns are. But also it's just so cute. And sometimes in your materials, you just send out Ron. You don't send out your photo. So tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about Ron.
Yeah, so Ron was designed when I was really in the depths of struggling with anxiety, and I wanted it to be represented by a monster, but I didn't want the monster to be super scary. So there are some images of him when he's angry, but others, like this one shown here, he's just eager to learn. This is the image used in the lessons tools. So he's just meant to represent anxiety, really. And I first went into it not thinking of them having a gender at all, but I guess it was a him, but I wasn't really tied to that. And then because in the app in English, because we're translated into 7 different languages, soon to be 8 actually here in November. Um, the voice is my voice, and that wasn't intentional either. I just found when I was starting out, it was really expensive to hire voice actors, and so I did my voice with the intent on changing it. But then I started getting good feedback on, hey, this voice is really calming, and people would kind of personify Ron and give him their own gender. Some people would call him a she, some people would say he, some people would, say they. So I think I really enjoyed that. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Doesn't really need to have a gender. The name Ron, though it's typically associated with men, it was just meant to be like a really common name, like
Mhm.
a guy girl next door. Like it's,
Mhm.
again, bringing back to that, like, don't be intimidated. This is Ron, like super neutral kind of name. So that was
Mhm.
the idea there.
I love it. And so it's your voice, which is
Mhm.
obviously, I can see that it would be soothing,
Thank you.
right? And your voice literally, and your voice in terms of the type of language that you've used. And as a
Yes.
woman, there was perhaps, not that men aren't capable of it, but it was a different voice. And
Mhm.
maybe that's beginning to change in apps that are available now. But I love the fact that this is It sounds like just a little gentler, a little softer, and aware. I mean, you're really talking about how scary having anxiety is. My experience with apps is that they're like, yep, you have anxiety, and here's what you do, without that acknowledgement, nod, awareness of how hard it is to live with anxiety. Everybody talks about, yes, I have stress, and yes, everybody's anxious these days. I mean, the pandemic, we don't even, I don't even have to, expound on that. Um, of course, everybody had anxiety, or most people had anxiety. So, having something like this with the acknowledgement too that anxiety is scary. So, how does the app address that? So, it's partly in your voice, in your literal voice, and in the voice of your language that you're using, the text that you're using. What would you like people to know about anxiety?
Okay, so you're definitely right that it's in the voice, it's in the language, it's also in the illustrations, it's also in the lessons. And the key lesson there is that, barring any other medical condition, so that's another thing we always encourage users to check in with their doctor, because knowing that it's nothing else is one of the first steps to really being able to learn and trust that, okay, this is what it is, and I can really take in these lessons and understand these lessons. So, barring no other medical condition, your body can typically handle anxiety, right? You feel like you can't, but you can. And so, it's really about empowering you and making the anxiety seem smaller
Mm.
and having it take up less of that mental space, take up less of your mental energy, drain you less, and really acknowledge that, something like Ron, he kind of, he's cute, but a little ridiculous. And I can manage this. I
Mm.
can deal with this. And yeah, so that's one of the core lessons. But it's really hard for somebody struggling to just hear that and be like, okay, sure. It's
Yeah.
really ingrained. You have to go through the lessons, do the tools and exercise. It takes a while. It takes a while, especially depending on how long you've had anxiety and panic attacks prior to trying Rooted.
Yeah.
See, when I was starting, I thought, okay, if I can help just a few other people like me, because I thought, this was happened way too long. I really missed out on a lot of opportunities in life, and it really changed the direction of what I wanted to do with my career. I didn't think that was fair. I was upset about it, and I was like, I really, at least if this helps other people not get to that point. And sometimes I'll get a message from users saying, hey, I had my first panic attack last week. Instantly, I thought I was quitting school or work. I was done. I was so scared and over all these things. And then I found Rooted, and it's only been a week, and I'm already rationalizing this better to myself. I'm back at school. I'm, continuing on with this and that. Just wanted to write and let you know. And so, like, stories like that are like so key, because it's like exactly why why I started it.
Yeah, right. So Sandy's asking, is there a way to adjust the voice speed in the app?
Not currently, no, Sandy. But if you want to send me an email explaining like why that would be helpful, I think definitely something we can look into. Now that we have so much content in the app, it's not everything is my voice. There's other speakers, and everybody has their own sort of way of speaking, right? So I think as we grow, we'll have more and more speakers as well. And that might kind of adjust your comment, or yeah. But if you want to send me yeah, how that would be helpful for you, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Another thing that you're doing, thank you, Sandy, for that, Anya, is you talk about your own story. And we all have to do that. I've had horrible anxiety at different points in my life. Thank goodness right now I'm okay. I hate to even say that, but
Yeah.
it happens. And for various reasons, things going on, tragedies happening in life, it happens. So it's so important that you're talking about it. We all need to be normalizing that mental health is just like everything else. You break a tooth, you you break a toe, you do something else physically, you go get it taken care of. So this is also an invitation to say, look, pay attention to your mental health. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. You've had anxiety, I've had anxiety, lots of people have had anxiety. We've needed to do things to take care of it, not think it's shameful. So it's both scary, and it can feel really shameful to folks. So I appreciate you sharing your personal story about that too. And boy, I wish your app had been around a few years ago. That would have been helpful for me
I
too.
hear that a lot from people. Yeah. And, earlier you said that I send Ron in place of my own photo sometimes. That was really at the beginning because I was not comfortable in the vulnerability of sending my own photos and being the face. I was like, I don't matter. It's really Ron that matters here. Then I spoke to some people about how seeing me and being a part of that story can really strengthen it and really get rooted to more people. So that's when I started kind of trying to overcome that fear too, because there's another fear. I didn't want to be like labeled the panic attack person or the anxiety person. But obviously, I think that the trade-off for reaching so many people is huge, and I think it's worth it, and it's totally working in that direction of destigmatizing um, panic attacks and anxiety. So
For
I'm
sure.
okay with it now, but it was definitely hard at the beginning. I didn't want to be on anything or in the articles even, but now I'm getting more comfortable with it.
Well, I'm glad you are, because there's a lot of value in both you and Ron. And what you're doing hopefully is going to help people feel like, look, yes, anxiety happens. There are tools, and maybe I need to get into some therapy to deal with what else is rooted in there. So I love the name too.
Yeah.
So appreciated. Sandy's wondering about your email. We will pop that up. Ania, so appreciate you being here with us today. Any final words for our viewers?
No, I mean, if anything else comes up, any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I know you're all, most of the people here in the audience would be people who are actually working with people who struggle with anxiety and panic attacks. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, I wish everyone all the best.
And to you, very, very much appreciated. Ania Waisako, so appreciate you and all that you're doing. Thank you so much. Thank you, those who have joined us today, and for those who are watching after the fact, much appreciated. Deanna Shoss, who's our producer from Intercultural Talk,
Mhm.
appreciate you as well. Everyone, have a wonderful weekend. If you're interested in hearing more from me, you are welcome to connect with me also at the Juniper Center. It's my whole name, Margot Jacot at thejunipercenter.com. That's our website, and we will be happy to give you more information about treating your anxiety and how to connect with Ania. So thank you so much for joining us with the Juniper Center Thrive Live. Be well, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.